When you think of Iron Man, one of the things that you can consider are the teams and people he's associated with. Whether it be the Avengers, the Illuminati, or fucking Team Iron Man. One thing that you probably didn't see coming is that he would then collaborate with EA Electronic Arts. Yes, that's right, I, Falling Hurts, am here to tell you, which you probably already know this and you just want to know more about it, that there is an Iron Man game in the works at EA. So with that being said, let's break down everything we know from the press release. Now, as I said, this comes from EA, and right off the bat, you should know that EA is the publisher, and Motive is going to be the developers. Currently, they are working on the Dead Space remake, which will be coming out, I believe, in January, and that looks to be pretty good, but that is not their own material, but it seems technically very sound from what we've seen, and they've been very open with development, something that's kind of been a breath of fresh air from EA that they've done with stuff like Skate and things like that, so maybe we'll get some kind of air to that as well. But this is an all-new project, so don't hold your breath. Previously, before that, they worked on Star Wars Battlefront 2's campaign specifically, and honestly, it was pretty lackluster as far as length and things like that, but I think it tackled some pretty interesting story. I mean, it talked about the contingency plans of the Emperor and different things like that, and it actually recanonized quite a few things that we weren't for sure about. Oh, and this is my bad, I hadn't played it yet, but Star Wars Squadrons is also by them as well, which from what I've heard is a very competent flying game, so that's cool, I suppose. But let's read the tagline itself. We're thrilled to share that an all-new, single-player, third-person action-adventure Iron Man video game is now in early development at the Montreal-based Motive Studio. The director on the project is Olivier Proulx? I'm not really exactly sure how to pronounce that, so I'm sorry. Either way, he worked on previous Marvel titles such as Guardians of the Galaxy, which, from what I can tell, was a sleeper hit. No one thought it was going to be good, especially after Avengers. But hey, here we go. Now, naturally, this will be developed in collaboration with Marvel Games, which we kind of know that they've been getting a lot smarter with handing out their assets to things like Insomniac for the Spider-Man IP, as well as also Wolverine now. But one thing that's very interesting about this is that at the time of recording this, at the day of September 20th, I believe it was just 11 days ago that the Marvel and Disney Games showcase went off, where they showed off some Alien stuff, as well as a lot of Marvel stuff. So I'm really confused why they didn't just announce this here, especially for how short that was. That was only 20 minutes. Maybe even just throwing in basically everything they're saying here from Blessing, that would have been really cool. But regardless, I mean, if they don't have anything to show for it, that's also fine. And the splash art is just an image of Iron Man with the Marvel and Motive Studios tags with it. The release goes on to say that the game will feature an original narrative that taps into the rich history of Iron Man, channeling the complexity, charisma, and creative genius of Tony Stark, and enabling players to feel what it's truly like to play as Iron Man. Something that I don't think games have previously done, but a good example of, I think, where EA may be in the headspace is that Anthem, a game that flopped overall and was discontinued for its 2.0 revival. One thing from an outsider looking in who never played the game, it really looked like that would have been a great Iron Man simulator. So maybe if there is some collaboration with that tech, since it's all under EA, that would be really cool, and probably put them in a good place to get a head start on this game's development. Even if they tweak things, of course, that's beside the point, but I think it would be a great base, if that was possible. Otherwise, the biggest piece of information we got from that was that we're playing as Tony Stark, not, say, I know the game would be called Iron Man, but, you know, not an original character or some spin-off type character in the Iron Man suit, which would have been a letdown personally. I think Tony Stark's really cool. I am really worried that we'll still have the Avengers effect where it's not Robert Downey Jr. and it just won't feel right. Maybe if they can tap a voice from, say, one of the, comic shows or whatever, that would have been cool too, but I'm not really personally familiar, but it may work for some. But truly the number one thing that I'm taking away from this press release, whether it be Olivier talking or someone from Marvel Games in the quotes, is that they're really pushing the idea that this will be a new and original story. Now, keep in mind, they are going to be pulling from the history of Iron Man, so, maybe expect to see some of those characters that you'll know and love, but that remains to be seen. Of course, we know literally next to nothing about this. But one thing that is said is that Marvel is encouraging them to take a completely fresh take, and that there is a lot of freedom, and it's said that it's going to be super engaging for the team, which is really awesome. When I think of game developers doing what they do best, it's always when there's a lot of freedom. You hate to be tied down by certain IP, especially working with Marvel and therefore Disney, because that could be pretty tricky. But so far, Marvel has been really good about letting the developers twist things their own way, say, Insomniac Spider-Man with their story, or Guardians of the Galaxy. Sometimes it just works out, and, letting these different developers from all across the industry do this, rather than tying it to, say, Sony or Square Enix or, EA, I think this is the right call to make. The reason I think Motive was probably the ones picked for this job was their history with Star Wars, which is also another Disney IP. They finish out the press release saying the game is currently in pre-production, and that there will be more updates as they get further along in development. Also stating that it is an exciting new collaboration between Marvel and Electronic Arts, with Iron Man being the first of several new games. And then of course at the end there's a call to go and check out the website for any listings on new jobs that you can help make the game. So really I think that's the only reason this game was announced right now. Is, hey, who doesn't want to work on an Iron Man game? This is how they get talent now, especially when everyone could work everywhere. I would like to take 1 second at the end of this video to kind of go back into speculation mode as we go back around to that new collaboration between Marvel and Electronic Arts. Now, previously, Electronic Arts held the exclusivity to the Star Wars IP for gaming, and that ended in, I think, next year or 2022. I'm not sure. Regardless, after that, we'll start seeing games coming out from other places. But this is really interesting that there is a deal with Marvel Games with EA. Honestly, I would have expected any kind of deal to have just Disney as the head of it now, because they don't want to tie anything down like that. But clearly, they plan on making more Marvel games. Maybe not exclusively at Motive. Perhaps we'll see, if Iron Man works out, there will be a sequel to that. And then while it is currently unconfirmed at this time, Jeff Grubb was going around for a long time talking about how there is a Black Panther open world single player game in development as well. So that would also be a part of this deal. And honestly, I probably expect that game to come out before this one. Regardless, as Marvel fans, or whatever, you should be eating pretty good. There's also Amy Hennig's game with Captain America and Black Panther as the two superhero leads. Continued Avengers support, I fucking suppose. And, there's always going to be other things announced as well. Midnight Suns looks kind of cool, even if strategy might not be your thing. And then, Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine are also coming from Sony. Regardless, let me know what you're most excited for and what you would want from an Iron Man game. Personally, I think it would almost have to be open world, but I'm really curious how they pull off the need to have flight combat. They'll have to make a lot of enemies that are flying as well, or else, why not just be on the ground and just kind of be overpowered? Anyways, that's it for me. Once again, my name is Fallinghurst, and yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.